Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Alien vs. Predator Galaxy podcast, the original Alien and Predator podcast. This is Aaron Percival, and joining me, as usual, is partner in crime,
Adam Zeller, or RidgeTop, as I'm known on the forums.
And this is episode 139. God, we're getting there. We're really getting there with these episodes.
150 coming up.
I know, right? And as I often say when we do get the opportunity to talk Alien versus Predator, it says it on the title, Alien versus Predator Galaxy. It's always been Alien versus Predator Galaxy, but we don't tend to get to talk that concept too much. But Alien versus Predator is very much a cross-media franchise. It has its origins in theatrical, but it is cross-media. We've got plenty of comics, we've got plenty of games, and we've got plenty of fantastic comics and games, and especially lately. But when it comes to AvP, aside from Adam here, who likes the films quite a lot, AvP's success tends to come in the comic form or the game form. You ask people what their favorite AvP is, it's going to be AvP 2, it's going to be AvP on the Jag, it's going to be the original AvP comic, and it's probably going to be AvP Eternal. For Adam and I, AvP Eternal is definitely up there, and for that reason, we thought it was time to talk to the person responsible for one of our favorite AvP titles, to talk to the person responsible for some of the franchise's notable and lasting plot elements. Is none other than Mr. Ian Edginton. Thank you for joining us, Ian.
I have a small boy in the corner, and he will be quiet. He's promised.
I'll try.
It's a pleasure.
So special extra guest as well on the show. And you know what? Like I said, Eternal is Adam and I's favorite. One of Adam and I's favorite. I consider it up there in the top 3. And
yeah, agreed.
I didn't say it in the preamble when we were getting ready for the show, but it's actually the first AvP trade I ever brought was Eternal. So as a fellow Britter, Ian, I don't know if you're aware of this place, Meadowhall in Sheffield.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever been?
Yes, I think so. A while ago.
Do you remember the lanes in there?
Oh yes, I remember. Yeah.
I brought it from the little nerd shop in the lanes. The same time I brought my first ever Predator comic as well, which was Helen Hotwater, many years ago. So not only is Eternal one of my favorites, it's also one of those ones that holds a bit of a soft spot in my heart for being my first. So it's an absolute pleasure to actually have you on the show. I mean, I know I first poked you a good, a couple of years ago, didn't I? But
yeah,
I never actually got around to organising it.
And then we lost a couple of years of COVID, and then there's things, and I've moved and changes in life and stuff and so on. So yeah, so it's nice to actually finally have you sit down and converse.
Indeed. But before we start talking spine ripping and chest bursting and generally being Alien and Predator nerds, could you just tell our audience a little bit about Ian outside of Alien and Predator? Who are you and what do you do?
I'm a writer primarily of comic books. I'm a dad to 2 children, one of whom has been pained back there, and a grumpy cat. And I have far too many books than is good for me at the minute.
There's no such thing.
And I'm a host to all of these Lego at the minute. I primarily work for 2000 AD, Home to Judge Dredd and things like that. And I have a number of series there. There's been Red Seas, which is like a fancy pirate thing. There's been Stickleback, which is kind of like a steampunk thing. And Matt Brooker, the artist, Israeli, and I, we did a series called Scarlet Traces, which was sequels to War of the Worlds. So that is we've had that running there. But I've worked for Marvel, DC, Dark Horse. I've done stuff for Iron Maiden as well. Did a couple of series for Iron Maiden. Just done one for Kiss, which has been quite fun. So I'm kind of jobbing writer, basically. I've done some Big Finish audio for Doctor Who, some Torchwood. So it's, jobbing writer and
a bit of everything then.
Yeah. It's kind of, you can never offend me by throwing money at me. But mainly it's just the idea. Someone said, do you want to come and write Doctor Who, or do you want to come and do Torchwood, or I want to do a comic? Can you put something together? It's like, yeah, okay, that's cool. So I've been very lucky in that it's been stuff that's like appealed. Yeah, that's a really cool idea. Or can you come up with something for Kiss or whatever? It's like, yep, I can give me the weekend. I'll see what I can do. I've done a lot of Warhammer and Games Workshop, some 40k and regular stuff. So
I do 40k.
Yeah, he does 40k. He does 40k. He's been painting 40k.
Oh, nice.
Can you sit down? Thank you. So it's the life of the jobbing writer.
And there's a lot of crossover there with 40k as well, isn't there? I mean, thematically.
Oh yeah, I think I'm. Thank you very much. I think I'm effectively unemployable in any other job now. I'm kind of like, I could maybe stack shelves in a pinch, but I'm not sure my back and my knees are up to it. But yeah, no, I've been really lucky as well in that I've worked on a lot of licensed stuff. I've done like Planet of the Apes and Star Trek, Star Wars, Xena, Warrior Prince. So I'm used to the kind of the strictures that come with working on licensed things. You can't particularly have an ego because you're playing with somebody else's toys and property kind of thing. But once you accept that, I mean, it's great. It's like with Aliens and Predators, it's just like, come and do us a series. It's like, yeah, cool. Okay. So yeah, so that's been fun to do. So I've been quite fortunate in my career thus far.
That's awesome.
So,
and a tradition on our show, especially for those who've had the privilege of playing in these sandboxes, is to ask our guests about the first time they ever encountered our favorite extraterrestrials. So do you remember the first time you became aware of the alien and the predator?
I went to see Alien when it first opened in Birmingham on its first run, and it was at the Gaumont, which was then the second biggest screen in Europe. It was like a massive wraparound cinema screen, and I was underage. So I was worried that I was going to and there was actually a queue outside and around the block. It was watching it on the first run, so we sneaked in, and that was good. That was it was scary. It wasn't as scary as I thought it was. It was just the atmosphere, big on atmosphere. I think I can't remember when I went to see Predator, but yeah, I went to see Predator on the first one, but I definitely remember going to see Alien. It was that Friday it opened or whatever, and there was a queue around the block. And we went, and it was just like that was good fun. We were all kind of like, oh, because it was said all in the newspapers, like, oh, people were so scared, and they were like throwing up, and we're like, oh wow, what's it going to be like? So yeah, and then I went to see Aliens as well on first run, and that was just awesome. We actually, me and my friend Sheldon, we actually went back up to the box office and paid again, and went and sat down, and we saw it the second time.
Straight back in.
Yeah, straight back again, because it's just like, that's great. What did we miss? Because we were just going, that's really cool. So yeah, so we watched it twice in the same afternoon. So there. So yes, big fan.
Which would you say is the favourite?
Oh, it's apples and pears. A big soft spot for Alien, just because it's the big monster in the haunted house kind of thing, big on atmosphere, and it set everything up, and it kind of pretty much was groundbreaking. Why have you got your hand up? Okay, give me a minute. He's wearing a Wayland Yutani shirt.
I know. I was going to mention. I
runs in the family. He's a good kid. But yeah, so big on the atmosphere for Alien, and then Aliens is just like it's just loud and in your face, and it's just great, and it's so it's. I got to give him. I think Alien maybe just hedges it because it was groundbreaking. But big soft spot for Aliens because it's just such a really good snorting movie.
And to be fair as well, Aliens has made such an impact on pop culture as well. Like we talked about with Warhammer, and then things that were inspired by that and also Predator. We got not Terminator, Halo. Space Hulk as well. So
I don't think you can have I don't think you can have like a space movie that's got troopers in now that doesn't touch on colonial marines.
Mm-hmm.
It's there. It's like it's like Blade Runner. Blade Runner has its fingers in every kind of futuristic tech noir kind of movie now. It's there. So I think that's the same with Aliens, and of course with Alien, it's like you can feel the slide into all, how it colours the medium. So
how about Predator there?
Predator's just big, loud, and stupid. I have to. It's like you're not looking for any subtlety in Predator, and it's just and it's just for ages I kept on quoting Jesse Ventura. It's you die, bite here in a world of hurt. Those just like it's just so full of memorable lines. So yeah, it's just loud, fun. I actually like Predator 2 as well. I think it's very much of an 80s movie. It kind of ticks all those 80s boxes. But yeah, I like that because it extended the mythos. You saw the Andolini pistol, and it kind of hinted at a wider universe. And it's like, ooh, okay, that's I like that. What's going on? I want to know more about that now, please. So, which is a shame they never kind of did it. But yeah, So I'm like, I'm easily pleased.
So something else we always tend to be really curious about, especially when it comes to people like yourself, authors who play in the expanded universe, is how aware they were of the other comics or books or stuff like that before they added to that tapestry themselves. So, prior to working on, was it Predator Pride? I forgot the title. Rites of Passage. Your first one, Rites of Passage. Were we familiar with what Dark Horse was doing?
As a fan, I picked up the Mark Verheiden series, the first one in black and white, and then the Denis Bouvet one afterwards. And I picked those series up and the Predator thing. So it's because it was still kind of like a novel thing back then. So it's not like it is now where there's so much licensed stuff. So so I kind of been picking them up from the get go. Read the Alan Lee Foster novels, of course, and so it's really weird to think, back then, no internet as such, so you would pick up anything that kind of related to the thing that you wanted. If you wanted more Aliens, you wanted more Predator, you had to buy the comics or buy the novels or whatever. So so I picked up the comic series, and of course the Denis Bouvet one, I loved that. That was my fast favourite. I think it just looked so cool, looked so great. The artwork was amazing.
That's such a cinematic style.
I think that's what kind of in essence, in some respects, it kind of spoiled me because some of the other series afterwards, it was Kelly Jones, who's great on his own, but you just go, oh, I want it more like this. But
that was published as Nightmare Asylum, right?
Yeah, I think
But, book 2, Nightmare Asylum.
But so I kind of I'd done a Terminator series for Dark Horse prior to that. Way back in time, I'd done a couple of series for strips for Deadline, which was a magazine over here, a pop culture magazine that was home to Tank Girl by Jamie Hewlett. So Steve Pugh, comic artist extraordinaire these days, and I did a couple of strips. They got picked up by Dark Horse Presents, and they said, "Do you want to come and do something else?" I went, "Yeah, fine." They went, "Do you want to do a Terminator series?" He was like, "Oh, okay." And so it was the second mini-series that they'd done. I was following on from the first one, so I did that, and I said, "I don't want anything else." And they said, "Well, how do you feel about Aliens or Predator?" I went, "Oh, okay." And then I think they said we've got a spot in the new anthology that was coming up. So there was that short story that kind of was just the right fit for that. So and that's kind of how I started doing the AvP kind of stuff.
Your first work with Dark Horse on these franchises was a Predator short called Rite of Passage. As you said, it's an entirely dialogue-less story that deals with a tribesman going up against a predator. While comics are a visual medium, they still tend to rely on dialogue or thought boxes to put additional context and points across. Did you find it difficult to write something that didn't rely on those elements?
I wanted to make it timeless, that it could have been the 1920s, or it could have been way back. It was just literally boils down to like a young man and his rite of passage, and he actually comes up against the predator, and how the story folds. And I thought I don't want to kind of like date it with anything and any kind of references, and I just thought let's just keep it just pared down, and almost like a cave painting story. You know what I mean? In that it could have been the rite of passage of some boy years ago. And so initially the editor said, "What why are we paying your page rate? You've not written any dialogue. And I said, well, I can, and I did put some like thought balloons and things, but I didn't want to kind of purple prose it. I didn't want to over embellish it. I just wanted to keep it stripped down, and you can see what's going on, and that you put your own interpretation kind of on it. It's not abstract, but you and I think there was one with thought captions and stuff on it, but in the end they went with it being pared down. They went, no, you're actually right, it works better like this. I thought that went great, that's fine. So yeah, it was I mean, it was early days as well, so to actually kind of go to an editor, it's like, actually I think it's better like this. Where normally you go, yeah, okay, I'll do whatever you want. I'm the young kid on the block kind of thing. I'm not going to say no. And I think on the strength of that, they kind of were more open to let me do other like AvP stuff. Then they kind of gone, okay, yeah, he's proved his chops, kind of thing. And so let's give him something else. And I think the next thing was it Rogue that we did? I think after that, yeah. So yeah, so that was they kind of were happy with that then. So it's like, okay, off you go.
I think one of the great things about Predator is it's really flexible in what you can do with storytelling, and that kind of thing. This entirely you projecting onto it visual story is perfect. I think it works really well.
Yeah, and it was Rick Leonardi, I think, on the artwork.
Yes, because he came back.
Yeah, I mean, Rick's just he just did a superlative job. So it's kind of just great to look at.
I definitely think the lack of dialogue or thought bubbles worked really well for that comic. And honestly, reviewing it before this podcast, it kind of made me think of the premise for the upcoming film a little bit. Did you get that too, Aaron, or no?
Well, what we know of we know of the film, yeah. You just seem to be preempting a lot of what they would do in the future.
Well, I don't know. It just kind of it's I don't know, but yeah, it's a very like fertile medium to play in. You know what I mean? It's kind of I like to write intelligent adventure action kind of stuff. I'm not an overly cerebral writer. I just like to have fun. I like to primarily be entertained. I just go, would this make me go, I want to read this, I want to watch that? It's like, wow, okay. And just that. And I just want people to be entertained at the end of the day. Had a good ride, a few shocks, a few laughs, gone, wow, a couple of like, wow, that's cool moments. And, then my work here is done, kind of thing. That's it.
And it also speaks to the shorthand comic mentality of the one with as well. So when you're saying, is this something I'd like to see? It speaks to that, the one with the guy eating the predator heart, the one with no dialogue, where it's a dude fighting a predator kind of thing. I like that.
Yeah, cool, thank you.
So you mentioned Rogue,
yes,
which is one of many of the one withs. And in there, so you seem to really enjoy throughout pretty much all of your stories, all the way to Batman Batman versus Alien. You seem to really enjoy playing with an element that a lot of writers really underutilized until very recently, and that was the DNA reflex.
Yeah. So
with Rogue, you had a really interesting take on it, and it wasn't necessarily just DNA reflex. It was eugenics, I guess. Selective breeding to breed in traits and attitudes into the aliens. And the main focus of that comic was the creation of the king. But you did demonstrate the Kleist, the bad guy for the comic, had effectively managed to do what he was trying to do. He had successfully bred certain traits into the adult aliens. But because the king's the main thing of the series, it's one of those elements that's there for you to think about as you move on with the narrative. So what did you actually envision a goal for him, with these aliens that he'd successfully bred to control? What would have happened had he not messed everything up?
I've been reading some like film magazines and think that and all the gossip of what was going to be next and so on, and that whatever the alien hatched from took on traits of the host subject. So, you know, like in Alien 3, there's the dog alien and that kind of thing. I thought, oh, that's quite interesting. So what if somebody actually did that purposefully with programming and stuff, so you could make them not necessarily more docile, but more trainable, or, you know, you could get them to do, they could be applicable to certain tasks and work in certain environments. And so it's essentially, it's almost like a David Cronenberg kind of thing, where you're making an organic tool. And so, and the king, I confess, the king was meant to be, excuse me, sorry, like a big, like, what the fuck moment. So it's one of those things where people go, wow, well, okay, you know, and it's like, I'm going to be contrary. There's a queen. Let's have a king. I don't know why, but it's a good idea. It's a really cool. But Kleist in the end kind of wanted the king almost to be his controlling monarch. So, you know, the king would do the controlling of his programmed aliens kind of thing. My memory's a bit spotty on this because it was a long time ago and I'm an old man. But yeah, so the idea was that you could, like, program these things. So it's like organic, kind of like body horror kind of, and so they could be used for anything. And also, I mean, Kleist is just one of those scientists who's kind of given a free rein and has no control over him. So he's just doing stuff because he can. So I mean, I think there's one bit where he's just got all these live heads of humans, his subjects just lined up. And the editor said, you know, why are they there? I said, we're not going to explain it. We just done. He's just a mad bastard, and so he's just done these things because he can. You know, I'd read some literature about Russian scientists keeping live dogs' heads alive. You know, so, and I thought, okay, you know, just because they could and things as well. And so I thought, okay, he's just a crazy dude, and so he's done stuff like that. But he does that. There's a thing at the back where, you know, he's trying to create these programmable organisms. So yeah, so that was from what I can remember. Yeah, it was just that there was like this Cronenberg kind of vibe I was trying to get, you know, where it's like programmable matter and, you know, and repurposing. You know, so it's stuff. So
it could have just been for whatever he wanted.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, there's no deeper meaning. I do apologize.
No. I mean, it's fair because it's a fake memory, but I always had it's a fake memory because until I reread it and remind myself that this isn't what you did. But I always had it as you suggesting other uses for them, like outside of military stuff. And then every time I come back to reread it for some reason or another, I'm like, no, that's not what he said.
No, I haven't read it now. I have to go back to it, actually. I haven't read it in ages. So it's
I did really like your dialogue boxes in the intro that talk about, like, we don't just conquer our fears, we market them.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
And open the comic. That was really interesting.
Wow, that's good. I'm most impressed with myself then. I don't remember that. That's great. Wow. Definitely got to go back and reread it. One
of my favorite things about doing, you know, these podcasts and actually getting to talk to, you know, the creators like yourself is the prep.
Yeah.
You know, just going back and rereading these things and just remembering just how flipping awesome these things are. I always say it's research with quotation marks on them.
It's legitimate research. It is. It's kind of
exactly.
And one of the elements that the Alien universe tends to stand out for is that the synthetic characters almost always have white blood, so much that whenever they have a red blood shown, it's generally a big deal. So in Aliens Rogue, when we see a synthetic take an injury, it is red blood. We were curious if that was a deliberate detail on your part.
I think that might have been a coloring boo-boo. Maybe.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
We thought it might have been, but we were just kind of curious.
I don't remember anything quite distinct for that. I will have to go and double check, but I suspect a coloring boo-boo. So yes, I would say it's probably a coloring.
Gotcha.
I thought so, but it's one of those. Yeah. I think it's Adam in particular is really interested in the times that
we have to ask about, because there are a few instances of that happening.
I'll try and make.
It was a mistake.
Yeah, I'll make something up that's like, oh yes, that's a clever thing, but no, sadly not. It's
fair. It's fair.
Yeah.
After Rogue released, Dark Horse followed your series with one called Labyrinth. There was a lot of surface similarities between the two, so much so that people wrote into Dark Horse questioning why they were doing your series again. Were you ever aware of that reaction?
Was that the Killian Plunkett one? Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that. No, no, there were some similarities, but I didn't think, hey, it's too much like mine. No, I love that series. So no, I wasn't aware of too much. I think there's certain things that when you deal with the aliens universe, you're going to always have like Marines, and you're going to have labs, and you're going to have there are going to be certain
they're going to be like big robot vehicles.
recurring elements kind of thing. So maybe it's just a case of that.
And we were also curious to know if you ever read the novelization of Aliens Rogue and what you thought of it.
Yeah, I did, because I really wanted to write it myself. I was itching to do some prose. I really wanted to write it myself. And I think, was it Judith and Garfield Reed Stevens, I think, did that?
Yeah, as Sandy something.
Sandy Mitchell. Yeah. The guy who was the spy, the industrial espionage agent, they swapped some things around there or did something different. But so I was like, oh, okay. But hey ho, yeah. But I did read. I read a lot of those novels at the time, the Music of the Spears and things. Because again, dearth of material. When something comes out, you just grab it. But yeah, it was overall. I was okay with it. It's nice to have a book out. You just wish your name was on the cover somewhere or something like that, because it's just appeals to the ego. Yeah. But otherwise, yeah, I was okay with it.
Is it weird to you reading other interpretations of your work, your story?
Yeah, sometimes it's kind of more often than not, because you go, "Oh, that's a really good idea. I wish I'd thought of that." They're kind of go, "Damn, oh, damn, okay." It is, and kind of, I did series for 2008 Eagle Scarlet Faces, which is a sequel to War of the Worlds. If the British Empire reverse engineered the Martian technology and how it would have extended the empire. And a couple of years ago, I actually put together an anthology of prose short stories set in that world. So it was all based on my stories, but then we got people like Stephen Baxter, Adam Roberts, Chris Robertson, and they did stories using my characters and my world, but their own take on it. And that was very weird to read, because it was strange. It was somebody playing in the corner of your world, and you didn't have any control over it. But it was like, that's still your stuff. It was like somebody coming in and trying your clothes on. It seems like, but it was good. It was like good fun to read. It's like, okay, this is it's nice. It's great. People took some stuff in some directions that I hadn't even imagined. And so yeah, it's flattering and kind of. Always intrigued to see whatever other people can come up with. I mean, in all fairness, I've done the same with other people's work as well. Sometimes, like I say, when you do the license stuff, by taking somebody else's property and embellishing it.
So after Rogue,
yes,
you worked on Purge, and along the theme of doing things that the films and other people would then sort of do, you played with an element that. It wasn't strictly in the film, but the novelization of Alien Resurrection would address to touch on something in the film, and that's natural conditions stunting the growth of aliens. With the Resurrection novel, it was a thyroid issue, but with Purge, you went for leprosy. Yeah. So where did this concept come from? And were you aware of Resurrection?
No, I hadn't read the novelization, but I just wanted something. I thought there's got to be something that can affect the processes, the biological processes, and I was just like, okay, think of something that's kind of interesting. And so I came up with dry leprosy, which is non-infectious kind of leprosy, and I just like the idea of this colony where these people are willfully being experimented on. They've all got chest bursters in them, but it's just a fact of their life, and ordinarily they would have a terrible life. They couldn't be treated, and so. But here they're actually living kind of like their best life in this colony, and so. And I like the idea of outsiders being the main star. So it's all these like grumpy old guys who are all infected, and of course Eloise, I think it was the synthetic. And she's very like maternal over them, and of course we know why, because of stuff that happens to her. But yeah, it's just one of the things. I think I'd read something that. Oh, that was it. Yes, right. Dusting off the memories. I've been talking to my mom at the time, and we were talking about the thalidomide stuff that happened in Britain in the 60s, where pregnant women were prescribed thalidomide to stop, I think, morning sickness, and it resulted in terrible birth defects and things like that. But I read afterwards that it was being used to retard leprosy in some cases. So this drug that had terrible effects on a lot of people, there was an application that was actually saving lives. There were side applications that this terrible thing. And I thought, well, okay, thank you very much. And so I thought, okay, let's carry that over and kind of extend the scientific metaphor kind of thing. And so that's where that came from. Thank you for it. I hadn't thought of that in years, actually. So that's where that kind of came from. Yeah.
Was that a story you pitched as well, or was that a?
Yeah, they said we want a one shot. I said, well, do you want it based on that? They said, no, don't touch on this, don't touch on that, but otherwise, it's up to you. And so yeah, it was just, and I'd hoped. I mean, I set it up so there could have been more adventures. I think we managed to squeeze one more short story with her later on.
Yeah, I think that was towards the end of your time, right? Did we talk off the air or on the air about her Bouvet's artwork for that one? I can't remember.
Yeah, I was really chuffed when I said he was going to be doing the cover, because obviously that the series that he did, I loved. And so then, oh, by the way, we've got Denny Bouvet in there. It's like, oh wow, okay, that's really cool. And it's such a gross cover. It's like it's when people see it, they have an opinion. You know what I mean? It's not one of those you can't not have an opinion about. And I know he's done commissions of the same cover several times, just because of the popularity. So
it's one of the iconic ones, isn't it? And Denny as well. It's like we've been saying, he's one of the franchise's best artists.
And Perch is one of those rare stories where you have like an AvP sequel to a standalone Alien story, with Pursuit, and there's only really been a few times that we've seen that. So I do always appreciate that, where you have something that was started as either an Alien or Predator story, and then we see a sequel to that goes.
Well, I try and put little plot threads out, and then if I get called back to do something else, I try and weave things in. So I don't want to jump ahead, but in Eternal, there's the mention of the legend of Samurai Subutai, and we actually see him later on in Xenogenesis kind of thing. So I like to throw these little plot threads out there, and if I get the opportunity, then I'll pick them up and weave them into the new stuff kind of thing.
Well, even the little details as well. In Rogue, you introduced LCT Corporation, and then they were the ones that were doing the experiments in Purge. So even those little story details.
Well, that's it. I in all the work I've done, I love world building. I love but not to do it overtly. So I like it when people go, oh, that links to and that links to that, and I like people to spot the Easter eggs and the little things, because it's I love doing stuff like that myself when you're reading the books, and it's I love doing it. So I thought I just like leaving these little bits out there. They don't make any major difference to the plot, but if you pick up on them and go, oh, that's really cool, and it's you kind of pat yourself on the back.
It's definitely, just like you say, it's something the fans love to see. After things like Isolation, Alien Isolation, everybody's ready for mentions of Seegson and all the callbacks and stuff like that. So yeah, it's bro.
Wasn't the Grant Corporation in the RPG, Aaron? Didn't they mention that in that one?
Grant wasn't from. Well, no, you mentioned Grant in Rogue as well. So you called back to Genocide.
Oh right, that's from Genocide.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of stuff, I think, in some of when we were talking, there's a lot of stuff that have been used in the novels and games, things that I had no idea about. So in some respects, it's quite nice and quite flattering. Just like, oh, okay, that's cool. But yeah, because it's just you throw these things out there, and then they take on a life of their own, which is quite apt, really.
So after Purge, you went on to do your first AvP series. As we talked about earlier, Eternal,
Yes.
often considered to be one of the best that the AvP concept has to offer.
Thank you.
But it does something that the movies are heavily criticised for, and that's setting the story on Earth. How do you think Eternal succeeded there, where the movies failed? And did the setting actually offer you much difficulty while writing this?
I tried to give it a bit of a cyberpunky edge, so it was kind of like slightly in the future as opposed to present day. Although we never mention it, but it's the whole idea. It's like 25 years in the future kind of thing, and the way technology is. And I tried to focus again on like character and the motivation and things, as opposed to bringing things in that would date it, kind of thing. So, but yeah, I mean, they Dark Horse were very amiable to kind of like setting it in present day. I said a lot of what we'll see will be there's going to be lots of fights and there's going to be labs and things, so we're not exactly going to see tons of stuff. And I tried to set it in the Far East as well, so it was like a different urban zone kind of thing, unlike LA in Predator 2 and things like that. So I tried not to make it too mundane and day to day. So even the present day world, as was in that issue, that series, still looked quite appealing. So yeah, so there we go.
Yeah, it was Tokyo, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think
you did have those kind of like Blade Runner-esque.
I've been reading a lot of William Gibson and Neil Stephenson at the time, and Pat Cadigan and things like that. So it seeped in.
It crept in.
It's funny because Pat's actually recently done an Alien story.
Okay.
Based on William Gibson's Alien.
Oh yes, okay, yeah. There is so much these days now. It's just like, good grief, I can't keep up.
You've been gone for a long time.
It's hard.
We're happy about it. We're not complaining.
Yeah. Oh no.
Eternal is also where we saw the introduction of the concept that eating predator hearts could prolong human life, something that you would also revisit in Xenogenesis. Can you tell us about the origins of that particular story element?
Yeah, again, it was just it's reading a lot of non-comic stuff and things, and science, and reading science just feeds into it. And I think I'd read something about sharks in the Arctic, because they've got a different kind of system, and they worked out that some were like 500, 600 years old, and there were scientists were going to try and work out some way of using that to in applications for modern science. I thought, well, okay, so they want the predator not just for the technology, but what can they yield? Like with the aliens, what can they yield with their physiology? And so the guy found, by eating the predator's heart, it healed him and gave him a certain kind of longevity. And so as he got older, it wasn't just physically eating it; you could extract the chemicals and process it. And so it was that again, the Cronenberg-y body horror kind of thing creeps in again, and the utilization of physical resources of another species to extend your own, because it's what we used to like asset strip whales for everything, bones and flesh, and so we would do the same thing with another species regardless. So
human race didn't give
I forget the terminology, but isn't there a thing in the East about what's the phrase there?
Or are you thinking about the one that Shane Black did, like eating the heart of your enemies or something?
No,
he was doing on the lead up to that movie.
This is gonna really annoy me now. The East's unusual medicine thoughts. I can't remember what it's called. Do you know what I mean?
There's an element of that fed into it as well. Yeah.
So that was a deliberate sort of thing in terms of setting it in the East, and him decided to just try eating the heart of an angel, I guess, for all intents and purposes for him.
One of the things I was wondering about is where he put that ship for all those years. because he found the crash and it ended up 700 years later in his tower. I was like, where did he hide that thing? How did that work?
How could he?
Well, he built up his fortune and then kind of didn't tell anybody about it, and then went back and moved. So
everybody in that village was dying anyway, so they didn't see it crash. Adam, weren't you also curious about Becca, the reporter?
Right. So that our protagonist in Eternal, at the end of it kind of sets up like she's ready to do more investigative reporting on what's happening here. But I don't believe we ever saw another story with her. So is that something you were at one time planning, or do you think there's potential there to bring her back?
I'd love to. That's one of those things, those kind of like plot threads I threw out there, and it's like it's ready to be picked up, as and when. I mean, I'd love to do that. I thought she was a really good character. I really like writing her, and so it's like, you always hope that they might get picked up later on, but and that you get to do it.
Yeah, well, hit up Marvel. Yeah. I mean, there's their AvP comics should eventually come, I guess, after they launch the Predator ones. But we would like to, like, as fans, there are some older plot threads. Like, I'm sure on some level they want to do their own thing, but there are some older plot threads we'd also love to see continued. So, and that is definitely one of them.
Becca's also interesting in that she's not. I mean, she's tough and she's driven and all that, but unlike a lot of like the female leads that we get in the Alien and the AvP stories, she wasn't so physically inclined. She wasn't an action hero. She was a lot more figuring things out and stuff like that, and that makes her stand out quite a bit against the likes of Machiko and Ripley and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's. I didn't want it to be kind of that kind of strong female kind of cliche that was in that kind of universe. I wanted it to be where she would get a punch in the face and she would mess up, and she would ultimately figure things out, and work things out and save the day, but in her own inimicable kind of way. She wasn't she wasn't Teflon. She had her faults, but she still came good at the end of the day. So yeah, I liked it.
But we did keep up, the female main characters as well. You mentioned Eloise earlier. I have a huge soft spot for Eloise. I think she is so fascinating as a character. And you revisited her again in Pursuit, and that was a wild comic as well for me. and I think LCT ended up showing up in that one again. So you maintaining those world building threads even in the shorts. But more interestingly for me is she's still out there.
Yeah.
Did you ever think about what you'd want to do with her if you ever came back to her? Especially with the wild nature of what was going on with her and that story.
Well, that's it. She just kind of headed off into space with a bunch of grumpy old blokes, basically. She was essentially like Cinderella and Snow White, and they were like the kind of like the seven dwarves with leprosy, and they heading out into space. I would always hope there would be a chance to do some more stuff. I thought she was definitely a character that got mileage, and because she was such a unique individual in her like physiology, people would be coming after her, kind of thing. And so she would be like she was essentially corporate property. So people would be sent out to go and get that corporate property back, and of course then you'd have other companies trying to get it as well. And so that's right. And so there would be a pursuit after her, and what would be going, the wider story in that. So yeah, it's one of those. I would love to have done more, but it never kind of materialized. But there's still the chance. You never know. I'd love to get the phone call from Marvel going, do you want to come and just do a bit more, tie these things up? It's like, but at the minute they're obviously they're giving the books name, the big name creators, because they want to get things going again. So.
The alien synthetic hybrid concept kind of reminds me of something that they later did in the Fire and Stone and Life and Death series with Sheldon, because you did kind of mention that the android blood has some sort of like biomechanical element that allowed the alien DNA to bond with it or something like that, and so that was an interesting take on that.
I can't remember how I did it, but I kind of made the leap that they could somehow connect the grow basically androids. I think the idea was like they could grow androids as opposed to actually having to build them, and it would be like an easier, cheaper kind of production. But yeah, I mean, I always hoped I'd throw these things out there and hope there'd be the chance later on of picking them up and doing more stuff with them. So it's, and who thought, there might be the chance now, 20 odd years on, it's like, oh, okay.
I believe you're actually the only comic writer outside of Randy Stradley to actually touch on specific elements coming off of the original Aliens vs. Predator comic. In AvP The Web, you revisited the character of Robert Sheldon, the young boy who survived the Predator's initial slaughter on Rishi. And you went in a very surprising direction with Bobby Sheldon. Can you tell us a little about how that one came to be?
Yeah, I can't remember the story 100%, but I do remember I pitched the idea and I thought they're never going to go for this, because that AvP crossover was a big deal for Dark Horse and stuff. And they went, yeah, no, it's fine. It's like, oh, okay then. And so I thought I liked the idea that those events in that first series had shaped him and warped him so that he would spend the rest of his life kind of fighting against the aliens, in his own kind of, he's got this kind of own obsessive kind of crusade, and he's become this like Howard Hughes kind of reclusive, warped, multi-billionaire kind of thing. And so yeah, it was just just a strange, warped little story. So yeah. But I was surprised that they let me use the character, but
But even like the suit thing that you did with him as well, it was like that's wild, that's big, that is, yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of a shocker story for me, because I just remembered in the original comic that scene with the kid's parents and the Predators that have kind of broken off from the code there, and you're just like, oh, poor kid. But then in this story, it's like he's become this evil cyber, like, megalomaniacal guy who's after the Predators, which it makes sense, but still you're like, whoa, like, kid has had a sad life here.
Yeah,
he's got a bit wild.
He didn't take it well, so he just decided to do that. So it's he was like a cross between like Howard Hughes and William Randolph Hearst and stuff. And I thought, if you've got that intelligence and you've got all that money, and there's nobody to tell you no, what do you do, kind of thing. So he just kind of ran wild, kind of thing, and
it's one of those, like you were saying, that there was little story details that it's such a, it's such a small part of AvP, and then it's like, what, yoink, let's do something with that.
Yeah.
That fans love. I remember the first time I read that and I realized who it was. I was like, this is amazing. I love it.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. It's just the fun thing. It's just like, dropping little Easter eggs and things, and just, it's like how everybody in Star Wars now remembers that the stormtrooper bumped his head on the door.
Yeah.
And so that they became Tag and Bink. There were further stories about these two guys who stole stormtrooper armor, and they kind of so they're in all the movies, and you'll see them in the background, and there'll be characters doing something, like the guy bumping his head, but actually they're these two guys who are impersonating stormtroopers, trying to get the hell out of a sticky situation. And so and so I just like the idea of, like, who's that guy at the back there, sipping the coffee? Let's see his story, And so I don't. There's no such thing as cannon fodder. Everybody's got a backstory, and so let's see what's what.
To go from that little person to that big person, your last work on the franchise was scripting Predator, Batman versus Aliens, one of only a handful of crossovers with DC, and this was also some time after the first series. This was many years after the first crossover. It was after Dark Horse had stopped regularly printing Alien comics as well, and tonally as well. Crossovers tend to feel a lot different to the main, at least to Alien. How did you find the experience working on that one? Was it weird doing the crossover?
It was kind of weird, because we kind of the editor kind of like disappeared partway through at the beginning, and so I don't know whether he'd been let go or left and things, and I don't know if we fell between the cracks or what, but I was doing stuff, and Staz, the artist, he went and got some other work because we were waiting, and then all of a sudden we got this email or phone call, like, where the hell are the script? And we're going, who are you? Go, I'm the editor. It's like, well, nice to meet you. Well, and so we suddenly had to jump back in, and it was a real kind of like race to the finish. I mean, it was fun to do and trying to fit it into the mythos, and I think it's the wheels get a bit wobbly towards the end. I'm not going to deny it, because I think we were it had been scheduled, and we were in kind of like a race against time to kind of get it all done to a degree of decent satisfaction. But I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there I'm really pleased about. The stuff in the 1920s with the temple under the ice and things. Things like the Joker alien, where it's the albino one with it, and there's some nice bits in there. So yes, I was pleased with the way it turned out, but I wish we'd had a bit more space, a bit more breathing room to kind of not have to do things at such a mad pelt.
It was interesting in how it was split into the 3 distinct parts as well. Obviously the 3 distinct issues, but each part felt uniquely different, which I thought worked really well for it.
Yeah.
And
go on. Sorry.
I was going to say, and this is somebody, I don't like the crossovers. In general, I've never liked the crossovers. But the last couple of years, I started reading the collections that they've been putting out, and I revisited the Batman stuff, and I was like, and the Predator ones as well. I was like, these actually work really well. And then when I got to part 3 of yours, I was like, this is so much fun. I love this.
Well, it was, it was, again, it was just meant to be like stupid fun and entertaining and things and so on. And I thought, and the idea of like crossing the aliens over the Batman villains and things, thinking, how can we do this? And Killer Croc seemed a natural, and the other, and so some of the.
Was that a deliberate reference to the first one with the crocodile alien?
Right? Only the fact that he's already a Batman villain, because I know Ron Mars really well and stuff. So, I talked it over, and I think it's only because he is a Batman villain anyway. So, but he just seemed a natural to do anyway.
Right, okay.
But yeah, so it's, and of course they made toys, which was even more of a shock later on, which was great. It's like, wow, okay. But yeah, no, it was good. I was surprised to see the temple under the ice crop up in the AvP movie. It's like, okay.
That looks familiar.
A couple of people did get in touch going, have you seen this? I went, no. I said, yeah, but it's not that of an original idea. It still goes back to like Lovecraft and all that kind of stuff. So I can't lay claim to it. So, but yeah, it was good fun.
If I remember rightly as well, one of the other crossovers, Batman and Predator, the one with all 4 of them.
Yeah.
If I remember rightly, that went back to Antarctica as well, because the Predators were chilling down there. If I remember rightly.
Not intended.
The franchises like Antarctica.
Yeah, they do.
I think you mean the Batman Superman Alien Predator one.
Yeah, that's the one with all 4.
There's like a lost colony, isn't it?
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, they did this collection recently, like before Marvel took it over. This paperback that collected the first one, yours, and then there is a Predator one as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, the crossovers, the Batman and the Batman and Predator and Batman and Aliens ones are probably the most well received. I would think. There's a lot of wacky ones, like the Witchblade ones got pretty weird.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll be seeing the Marvel ones now. I don't know if we'll see any more DC crossovers, but that'll be a whole new interesting thing.
I mean, I think they've already announced that Conan is going to be in the Marvel universe.
He's in the Savage Avengers, I think.
That's it, yeah. So part of me is like going, but both of part of me is going, yeah, that sounds really cool. So
Conan versus Predator.
Yeah, it's cool. What's going on? Yeah.
Well, that would work, I think. Conan versus Predator.
That's a really good idea. I like that.
They did
Tarzan
versus Predator, yeah. So we've spent a lot of this episode praising you.
Okay.
And talking about how much we loved everything you've done. The final series that you worked on was one of the Xenogenesis event.
Yeah.
Now I'm not saying anything to you here, but the Xenogenesis event is often considered the event that sent the Alien and Predator comics into hibernation. It was the end of the first golden age, as I like to call it. Tell us about working on that series and how aware you were of that perception.
It seemed like a good idea at the time. I wasn't, just like the whole concept of it, I wasn't too sure, but there's enough in it to make me think, yeah, I'd like to have a go at this, but it was crossing over the other Xenogenesis kind of books, and it seemed to be trying to make it all to be something that it really shouldn't have been. I'm speaking from down the lens of years now, so I can't remember all of it quite clearly. But it wasn't as much fun to write as a lot of the other stuff. It came with a lot of restrictions because you had to tie it into the other things, and you did get the feeling that it wasn't kind of working out as well as it could have done. So as you say, you got the feeling that maybe the tank's running out of gas, kind of thing, a little bit.
Was that very much a work for hire kind of piece? It
was. It was something I didn't want to turn down. I'd worked with the properties before, and so I felt an affinity, and I thought this could be fun. I could make it work. But I think there's sometimes when you need to listen to your inner voice. Sometimes just go, what, let it kind of go. And so it didn't work out quite the way I hoped it would have done, and I think it just kind of it fizzled, which is quite sad. But
do you think that was a bit of a Dark Horse Hail Mary? Because Dark Horse didn't really do events like that.
Yeah,
that was a Marvel thing.
Yeah, it felt like it felt like it shouldn't be an event. It didn't feel, it wasn't kind of, it didn't hang together properly. There was a lot of optimism, but I just don't think it just didn't kind of hang together properly. And so, I mean, everybody did their best and things, but I just don't think it was. Yeah,
I think there's plenty of concepts in there that I thought were really interesting and really, something to play with. Probably of a focus of its own. This whole concept of upping the ante with the predators, I thought was really interesting, and the whole, you can't keep escalating the situation because it's going to turn out really bad for us. You can't, you can't beat them, and like the whole anti-predator task force kind of thing. And to be fair, it seemed like you did have some fun in some elements, with bringing back Super Tie.
Yeah.
That was a retcon, because I think in Eternal, you pretty much, the intent was, we live 200 years. That's it, we're done. But you brought him back for for Xenogenesis, and I really, really liked that. This idea of this 1,000-year-long sort of grudge match.
Yeah,
that was cool. I mean, did you enjoy working with Super Tie on that one?
Yeah, I just thought I thought, well, if I'm going to do this, I want to put something in it that's going to make me feel, that makes me going to want to do it. So, there's that kind of like Highlander element kind of thing. It's just he's been there, he's been behind the scenes and been doing this for all these years, kind of thing. So, I enjoyed doing that bit. That was fun.
Okay.
It's okay. Did they do trade collections? Did they only do the one lot, and then they never got reprinted or put together? I think, did they? I don't remember.
They were in the omnibus that they did in the mid noughties to late noughties. I don't think they ever went to trade. I think you got singles, and then they were just collected in the omnibus.
Yeah. I'd like to. To be honest, I haven't read them in years. I wouldn't mind going back and having a look, see what it is. Oh, that's something I'll be scouring eBay now.
So you might as well wait for the Marvel things.
Yeah, well,
yeah. To be fair. But for the price of Dark Horse's mini omnibuses, you'll get like 3 times as much.
Some of that, I didn't realise how much some of them go for. It's like, good grief. I've got a box of comps, and it's like, how much are these worth? It's like, wow, okay, it's. I picked up the one with the Richard Corbin stuff because that was a really nice story. I like that. So I was trying to fill in the gaps between the ones they sent me, but they were so expensive. It's like, wow, okay.
I mean, at the time they came out, they were brilliant. It was like 20 quid.
Yeah.
And it was collecting stuff that had never been collected before. If it weren't for those things, I don't know how I'd have read half of the stuff
I mean,
the
my favourites are things like Mondo Heat and Mondo Pest, the Ronnie Del Carmen stuff. Because of course he makes movies now. He works for Pixar and things like that. And then there was the Wraith one.
Yeah.
Was that right? And then of course the Alien Resurrection, which was all Eduardo Rizzo artwork, which was great. It's just like, wow, that was really cool. So it's got, I'll pick up like those little standalone ones. And I tend to get stuff like that bound on my own. So I have like little bound volumes of my favorite comics. So I've got like a set of Marvel, when Marvel did Logan's Run, and it was George Perez doing it, and there's only like 6 issues, 7 issues. So I got those. They'll never get reprinted anywhere because of the rights and things. So I got those done, and the Jack Kirby 2001s, and then I've got one of all the odd standalone issues of Alien that I've got bound just for my own pleasure.
That's cool.
So yes.
Was there anything you wanted to do in any of your stories but were forced to abandon for any reason?
Nothing that I wanted to do and they said no, you can't. But I always wanted to go back to Alien and do that big kind of like pants wettingly scary horror, almost like Lovecraft, which it's one person or something. Again, there's not loads of aliens. It's just literally you've got no weapons, you've got no tools, and there's this thing there. And how I just wanted to do something that was really deep and scary and atmospheric and survivalist kind of horror thing. So that's what I wanted to do. Okay. But yeah, no. So I wanted to rewrite Alien. Basically, I wanted to do something deep, atmospheric and scary, and so.
Yeah, with the comics,
it had got some. There was so much to do, like clone and marines and technology and anti-alien acid suits and things and so on. And I want to kind of get rid of all of that and kind of basically get it back to basics. So yeah, that
get it from scratch.
Yeah, that would have been what I'd like to have done if I had the chance.
Yeah, so many of the earlier comics were kind of riding off that hype from the second film, Aliens, and you saw a lot of the more like action-oriented comics. But I think in the later Dark Horse years, Aaron, we started to get some that were kind of more the survival stories, focusing on a limited number of aliens. So it's something we've started to see a little bit more of in the latter years of Dark Horse, and I definitely hope they continue that in future stories, or at least give us a good balance of both styles.
Yeah, I mean, I've been listening to the Alien Charybdis.
Yes.
Oh, by Alex. Right.
That was really good because I'd not listened to any for ages. Charybdis, I listened to it on audiobook, and I just thought, wow, this is great. I really love this. It kind of really got me back into the Alien universe again. I've kind of been out of it for such a long time, and I thought, are they worth reading? I read the short story collection. I thought
there's probably not a good in though. To be fair,
yeah, there's a couple in there I quite liked. It's like okay, so I thought, okay, I'll give this a go, and I stopped what I was doing and just sat down and listened to it.
I heartily recommend. So, Into Charybdis is a sequel to The Cold Forge. If you haven't, have you listened to that one?
I've got that queued up. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Go to that one once you've done with Charybdis. Because that's where have you? How far in are you?
Oh, well, I've got it. I haven't listened to it yet, but I haven't.
I mean, into Charybdis. How far in?
Yeah, I finished Charybdis. Yeah.
That's where Blue comes from.
Yeah. So it's like wow, okay, and it's kind of got me back into it, which is nice. It's just like because I really want to like it. You know what I mean? I love the Alien Predator universe, and so going away and I fell out of love with it. But coming back now, it's like, okay, it's like another generation of people who've kind of picked up the franchise torch, and they're doing really good jobs with it. It's like, okay, I'll pay attention.
Alex Y and their books are generally considered some of the best the franchise has to offer at the minute. Yeah. It's fantastic. If you haven't, I also recommend Phalanx from Scott Siegler.
Yes, that's been recommended as well. Yeah, I like the sound of that.
He did one of the few good shorts in Bug Hunt, that anthology book.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. What made you fall out of love?
I think it just got, like I said, it's like Marines and technology and farming aliens, and it just kind of like built stuff.
It was getting too much.
Yeah, it had this accretion of stuff around it, and it kind of lost the core sensibility. It just became a bit too much, and I kind of wanted it to get back to like the core kind of horror. I think sometimes if you explain things too much, you demystify it, and it kind of spoils it. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's all right not knowing. You know, you just want to run around, be scared, and try not to be killed, and stuff. And that's why the last couple of Ridley Scott movies, it's just like I really wanted to like Covenant. It looked great.
I feel you. Yeah.
You know, and it's just like, oh, really? Please, just stop. You know, especially when you see like there's such good like sci-fi shows on Amazon Prime and Netflix now. Things and you just think, just get these people in. You know, and do. I think sometimes people don't have enough distance from the property, and it's so in the end it just kind of I just got put off because it was just too much. But like say that those stories, it's like, okay, that's kind of got my taste buds going again now. I want some more. So.
Good. Well, speaking of not very good movies, I'm sure there's I know there's not going to be too much to this one, but there was in the early 2000s, you know, when the first AvP was looking likely. Now, I know we spoke about it off the air, but I guess I'm more curious about your reaction to it now more than anything. You know, there was a pitch from two writers, James DeMonico and Kevin Fox, that sounded so much like an adaptation of Eternal. How cool would that have been from your perception, you know, to see that adapted on the big screen?
Well, when you mentioned it to me, I kind of went, you what now? It's like, what? I'm finding this out 20 years later. I can wax lyrical now with, you know, the hindsight of years, it would have been quite cool, but I don't know how it would have felt going into the cinema and seeing I don't know if we would have even got screen credit because it was work for hire and whatnot, but it would have been great. I mean, you know, where would my career have gone if they kind of that had been the movie? It would have been so cool. But yeah, I mean, because it's licensed, I suppose, you know, you don't have a say, and so they give it to a screenwriters or whatever to have a go. Or so you have to kind of be philosophical about it. But it would have been cool. It would have been cool. I would have really loved it. You know, it would have been nice to get paid for it or whatever, but just still, even so, part of me, the fanboy part of me was still gone. Yeah, but they made a movie of your comic. You know, it's like, okay. So yeah, it's kind of a bit of a double-edged sword, but it would have been cool. Come on, it would have been cool.
It would have been cool.
A big wedge of cash would have been nice, but it would have been cool as well.
Yeah, I've honestly never understood that some of the fans' aversion to the Earth setting. I think it's just how you do it, and your comic Eternal definitely did it right, and it showed that I think the concept can work if done in a certain way. I
think in the second AvP movie just didn't do it, but you know, it was almost like a slasher movie kind of thing. It's a small town, and I think that's the kind of thing that they didn't want. But if you just make the setting. To make the settings interesting, it's like the aliens and the predator. Then, I don't see why you can't.
We'll see with the Alien series if they can pull it off with that one.
Well, hopefully, you know, is that full Netflix or Amazon?
I think it's going to be Hulu, FX on Hulu, and it's Noah Hawley is the showrunner for that.
Yeah, I mean, because it's been, you know, the stuff that's coming out on TV seems to be a lot stronger. You know, that it's much better made. So.
You're welcome.
Fingers crossed, you know, touch wood, fingers crossed.
Well, we've got high hopes, big hopes.
And a lot of elements of what you first introduced into Alien and Predator lore are still used in reference today, particularly in the video games. The Kramer assault rifle is in Aliens Fireteam Elite, a recently released video game. The concept of predator blood or biology prolonging human life was both in Predator Concrete Jungle and Predator Hunting Grounds. So how does it feel knowing concept you conceived have pervaded in the lore after all this time?
Again, it was like, I did not know this until it was mentioned. But yeah, I mean, it's great to, like, you know, that you've done your little bit to add to the canon kind of thing. It's you know, your stuff is in there and it carries on past you kind of thing. And that it was, you know, good enough as well that people do want to incorporate it. So yeah, I'm pleased. It's great. You know, if it makes people happy when they're playing it and just think it's cool, then that's great. Love it.
Something I kind of noticed while reviewing these before the podcast was Gideon Lee using the Predator plasma caster on his shoulder. That's the first time I remember seeing that, but that was in the last Predator movie, The Predator.
Yeah,
Traeger had the plasma caster on his shoulder. I was like, did they take that from that old comic? But
well, so I think some of it is just like it just seems like a really cool idea, and I kind of did it first.
Yeah,
so like an obviously cool idea. It's like, let's do this. It's like, okay, so.
Oh, he was smart enough to at least not get his head blown off, even if he was a bit too thirsty for Predator blood to let himself get killed in the end.
I love that he cheated the Predators as well at the end of that one.
Oh, I'm not an honorable man, and he has the little side thing that comes out of his armor. Yeah, that was a good bet.
Was it actually meant to be at the end of it? Was it meant to be Ripley in the tank?
Oh God!
What is that?
So they shot multiple endings for that. One was Ripley with a mask that looked like a face hugger. One was supposed to be Newt, and then the one that made it an adult Newt, and then the one that made it into the film was the Predator killer suit.
Okay. Because I just thought there's no way they could. Does this bring in time travel now? Or
yeah, I know.
Alternate timelines. Yeah, it was a very.
We don't like the film.
No. We can just imagine though in some LA office, some producer guy going, "Hey, let's have it where it's Ripley," and it's like yeah, that's such a cool idea. And you can actually
when it was happening though, I was like, my mind went to, is it going to be Royce? Is Adrian Brody going to be back? I didn't go to Sigourney Weaver or Ripley.
Yeah, I love Predators. I think that's
Me too. We had the pleasure of speaking to Nimrod. Actually, it was one of the highlights of the podcast. Speaking to the director of Predators.
I just love the fact it just drops you straight in, no explanation.
Best cold open of any of the films.
Having worked on so many stories for Dark Horse and seen your stories envisioned by many different artists and styles, which do you feel best suited your own writing in terms of artwork?
Ooh, that's right. I don't know. I like Will's because we did this kind of like gothic-y body horror kind of, and so Will's kind of quite scratchy style really suited that. I don't know. I don't know. I was happy with pretty much everybody who did the stuff. I mean, Alex, he was in his early days. Alex Maleev, when we were doing Eternal, was starting out, and I think he was also doing a job working on a video or something. And said, "Oh, I've been talking to this artist who's helping me." And the storyboard artist, I think, was Neil Adams. It turned out he was like famous comic artist, and so he gave him like pointers and things and stuff. And so after he started doing that job, you could see the change in the artwork style and the fluidity into it. So that was really quite interesting. But no, I mean, he did a cracking job on that. I've been pleased with everybody. I've not had an artist I would ever complain about on stuff like that. So I'm all good.
So I'm going to assume this next one's a big fat obvious yes, given some of the what we've talked about so far. But while no longer under Dark Horse's banner, Alien and hopefully Predator are continuing under Marvel. If given the opportunity, would you want to return to Alien or Predator?
Absolutely, definitely. Love to do Alien. Yeah.
Have you worked with Marvel before? I can't remember.
Yeah, I did Blade. I did a regular series of Blade for them, and then when they got the Star Trek license, myself and Dan Abnett, we did 2 or 3 series.
Marvel had Star Trek.
Yeah, we did Star Trek Unlimited, which was a bi-monthly, 2-monthly. It was double-sized, so half of it will be classic Trek and half of it will be like next gen. But we did Early Voyages, which was Captain Pike. The pre-Kirk captain. So we did the adventure, which a lot of people seem to remember as well, which is good. And of course, there's the Captain Pike TV series coming up soon.
I'm so looking forward to that.
But yeah, so we did Star Trek with them and a couple of other things on and off over the years. So
So that's actually everything from us. But before we let you escape, we did have some questions from members of the AvP Galaxy community. Creighton would like to know if there was any cinema literature characters you took inspiration from while developing Rogue's mad scientist, Ernst Kleitz.
It was kind of a mix of Dr. Pretorius from Bride of Frankenstein, which was the Ernest Thesiger character. I mean, that's the old 30s Universal thing. And also the original Dr. Moreau, good grief. Can't remember his name. The guy who played Hunchback and Charles Lawton, thank you. Charles Lawton, who played the original Dr. Moreau, who's this quite amoral a character who thought nothing of the cruelty inflicted on the creatures that he was turning into humans and things. So it was that kind of, and then there's a bit of Herbert West in there as well, from Reanimator. So that kind of, it was a bit of a mashup.
And Creighton also asks about the design of the Alien King. He was curious as to if you collaborated with Will Simpson and Robbie Bush on the look.
Well, I think we said like the Queen looks like this, so we want to have the king something a big hefty creature, but something different shapes, a different silhouette kind of thing. And we threw some ideas around, like spines and this and that and so on and so forth. So I mean, at the end of the day, it was down to Will, but we just kind of like spitballed ideas, and then he went off and did his design, and Dark Horse were really taken with it. So that was it.
And that cover art as well. I can't remember who did it. Who did the cover art? With the awesome one with the king.
Oh, that was Will as well. He did the cover art.
Right. Yeah. I think that's my favorite rendition of.
Yeah, he was. He did the cover art on those. Because I mean, I asked Glenn if he wanted on Eternal if he'd come and do the covers for that, because I just thought he'd do a great job. Glenn Fabry, he's it, and I think that cover, the trade, is quite memorable. The reflection of the alien in the blades. So yeah.
So Sil's interest. This is funny considering what you were saying earlier, but Sil's interested to hear if you have any thoughts on how you might tell an alien story with the information that we've now had from like the prequels and the way that's took the story. Or I'm guessing you wouldn't really want to play in that sandbox.
No,
to be honest.
again, it's kind of I would take it where it's just like a character-driven story with somebody up against alien, or the environment they're in is got aliens, that kind of thing. All that stuff of. Yeah, no.
don't want to play with the black girl.
No, it's just it kind of spoils it. It's kind of, and there was a way of doing it, but they kind of I don't know. It's just very frustrating. So, you had the budget, you got the effect, and you just did that with it. Really? Oh, okay.
It's embarrassing.
It's just a shame, that they had the resources and they could have done so much more.
Okay.
Yeah, the mad scientists in Covenant, is again like yours is part of those early stories we saw in the Dark Horse comics that had like the mad science angle, and Covenant went with the Moreau stuff as well a bit. There was
a degree of like Dr. Mingley and stuff and things in there as well. That kind of like the insanity and amorality and things. But yeah, no, I don't know. I really want to like Prometheus and Covenant, but it's just.
I don't think you're alone there. Don't worry. Adam hates them.
It's not so much anger; it's just disappointment.
Yeah, I would like to like them as well. Like I really
you had all this stuff, and I'll have to make maybe once a year I'll go back and rewatch them because it's like, were they really that? And you just go,
yeah,
okay.
They're shit.
So
there's still like good elements I think that make it worth the rewatch. Like some of the production design is just so well done. So there's elements I can really appreciate. But overall,
that's it. It's just kind of you gotta look. I mean, and there's talking production design. I think Titan this year are doing a big art book of Ron Cobb stuff. So that's
okay. I need to go have a look for that then, because I don't think that one's crossed my radar at all.
I just barely heard about that one.
Yeah, it's later. I think it's later this year. They're going to do a big hardback. The way they did the Jeff Darrow one and things like that, which has been a long time in coming because there's only been that one paperback that's had his stuff in. from the 70s and things, which goes for silly money online. So yeah, it's about damn time. But yeah, it's just you just want to see more of what went on, in the background kind of thing. So yeah, cool.
So that's it.
Okay.
That's it. Everything. But before we go, is there anything you'd like to share? Any anecdote or thought that we just haven't given you the opportunity to put across with any of our questions?
It's all been so long ago. It's kind of like trying, but it's just been fun. It's just been a blast. That's the main thing. I had a really good time doing the stuff. To be asked to do this stuff
repeatedly.
Yeah, you just go, yeah, that's so good. You're really fortunate. You're really lucky, and so I never kind of took it for granted, and just really enjoyed it. And so hopefully after I'm long gone, people still pick up the Eternal or whatever and go, this is a really cool read.
I will.
Thank you.
I'm going to be still alive.
God bless you, Dove. But yeah, no, it's just been great. It's not very often you get to work on things like this, and so it's been great. Can't complain. Even the stuff that have been with problematic and the Xenogenesis thing at the end, I'd still I'd still do it again if I got offered it, because it was just great toys to play with. And that's the thing. I've grown up with this stuff. I love science fiction and horror and fantasy. It's I was one of those kids at school. You know what I mean? It's like yeah.
I would like
so there we go. Yeah.
Cool.
Yep.
Is there any outlets, any places, websites, social media presence that you'd like to signpost people to find out
I'm
more
an
about?
enigma at the moment. I do need to get a website. I haven't got a website set up, but I do need to get one done. Otherwise, no, you'll just have to. I'm an old man. I'm on Facebook. And that's about it. I don't mess around with TikTok and Instagram and all these things the young people do. But I do a few conventions I do Thought Bubble up in Leeds. I'm hopefully going to go to New York this year.
I'm jealous.
So I'm kind of gonna, I want to get back out again now.
Come do one of Showmasters.
I'll be more than happy to come and do stuff. It's I've done the one in London a couple of times because I was doing some stuff for heavy metal. So yeah, no, I'd be more than happy to kind of come and do stuff.
I'll try to Necron mocks.
Okay. But yeah, no, I like to just sit and, because it's a job where you sit on your own most of the time.
Yeah, so very solitary.
Yeah. So when I do Thought Bubble, Matt Disraeli, the artist who sketches, and while people are waiting for sketches, I just sit and gas and talk to people, and it's just really good. And you get feedback and stuff, and you often get people go, that thing you did, I don't like it. And I was like, oh, okay. I once had a guy queue up while I was doing a signing in London. And he queued up for must be about 45 minutes. Just came to the front. He went, that thing you do, I don't like it. And then he just went. And that was it. And it's like, okay.
That was a waste of time.
The thing is, the fans on the whole, 99.9% are just great. They're really good laugh, lovely people. They bring you stuff. I did a signing for the Iron Maiden comics, and somebody came dressed up, full costume as Eddie with an Eddie mask on. Just growled and grunted, never spoke. Great. It's just like he's the Iron Maiden character. So it's great people. So yeah, I'd love to. I want to do more conventions now. Now we're kind of out of COVID. We're coming out of our bunkers. It's
has war ended?
To meet people again. It'd be nice.
Yeah, I would say come to Salt Lake Comic Con, but that might be a bit far past New York. So
no, I mean I have a word with people, because I would be more than happy to come over to things and stuff. And if I get a couple that are lined up within a close time frame, I'll come and do them, because I've got friends over there I'd stop with. So yeah, I just want to try and after COVID now, to get out a bit more and meet and greet people and stuff and say hi.
I'm really looking forward to. Me and the missus are going to London at the end of this month. Yeah, we're in February, aren't we? Yeah, we're going to the London at the end of this month, and it feels like it's been like 5 years since we've been anywhere. So I'm really looking forward to
going on a train like long distance, an hour or two. It's really weird, It's kind of it's like it just feels strange to kind of like travel and stuff. But yeah, I want to go up to Edinburgh before the end of February to see the Ray Harryhausen exhibition. Because that finishes in February, and I really want to go. It's kind of thing. That's the big thing I want to do. So, I've got to get on a plane, go to Edinburgh, and go and see the exhibition possibly. So there we go.
If you're watching this on YouTube, our socials are on the bottom of the screen right now. But for those of you listening, Adam, if you want to shout them out.
Sure. You can find us on our website, which is avpgalaxy.net, if you'd like to see our news, editorials. We also have message boards to discuss the franchises with fellow fans. We're also on all the major socials, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. If you search AvP Galaxy or Alien vs. Predator Galaxy, you're sure to find us.
Thank you, everybody, for listening or watching. This is Aaron.
And Adam.
And this is Ian signing off, saying if you buy it here, you're in a world of hurt.